The night of my 30th birthday, I stood alone in my living room, staring at a table full of food that had gone cold, balloons slowly losing air, and a cake with candles that never got lit. And I remember laughing out loud because it felt so unreal it was almost funny. I had invited my entire family, every single one of them, and not a single person showed up. No texts, no calls, no excuses, just silence. And the part that still messes with my head is that exactly 1 week later, my mom showed up at my door crying, asking me for help like nothing had happened. So tell me honestly, before you hear everything else, was I wrong for how I reacted after that? I need to rewind a bit because this didn't just come out of nowhere. Growing up, I was the easy child. That's what everyone called me. I didn't cause trouble. I didn't ask for much. I didn't rock the boat. My younger brother, Mark, was the opposite. He was loud, impulsive, always in some kind of mess, and somehow that made him the center of the universe. If Mark needed help, the whole family mobilized. If I needed something, I was told I'd figure it out because I always did. At family dinners, conversations revolved around Mark's latest drama, his job problems, his breakups, his financial disasters. I learned early on that if I wanted attention, I wasn't going to get it by asking. So I stopped asking. I told myself I was independent, that I didn't need anyone. But deep down, yeah, it hurt. It hurt watching my parents bend over, backwards for him while I was expected to be fine with scraps. By the time I hit my late 20s, I was exhausted from always being the afterthought. I had moved out years earlier, built a decent career, paid my own bills, and honestly, I was proud of myself. Turning 30 felt like a milestone. It wasn't just a birthday to me. It felt like proof that I had survived my 20s, that I had built a life on my own. For once, I wanted to celebrate that with the people who were supposed to matter the most. So I decided to throw myself a party. Not some massive, expensive thing, just a simple get-together at my place. Food, music, cake, laughter, family. I sent out invitations weeks in advance. I followed up with texts. I reminded everyone multiple times. My mom said, "Of course we'll be there." My dad said, "Wouldn't miss it." Even Mark said, "Yeah, sounds fun." For the first time in a long time, I actually let myself get excited. The day of the party, I went all out. I cleaned my apartment top to bottom. I decorated. I cooked dishes I knew everyone liked. I even bought a nicer cake than I normally would, because 30 felt important. As the start time got closer, I kept checking my phone, smiling every time it buzzed. At first, I told myself people might be running late. That's normal, right? 15 minutes passed. Then 30. Then an hour. I texted my mom just a casual, "Hey, are you guys on your way?" No response, I called. Straight to voicemail. I tried my dad. Nothing. Mark didn't answer either. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, that sinking feeling I had known my whole life. But I kept making excuses for them. Maybe there was traffic. Maybe something came up last minute. 2 hours in, the food was cold. The music was still playing to an empty room, and it finally hit me. Nobody was coming. I sat down on my couch, staring at the door, half expecting it to open any second, but it never did. No explanations came that night. No apologies. I ended up lighting the candles on my cake by myself and blowing them out alone. I didn't even make a wish. I just laughed again. This hollow, bitter laugh. Because what else was I supposed to do? Cry? I had cried enough times growing up. That night, I cleaned up in silence, packed the food into containers, and went to bed feeling smaller than I had in years. The next day, I woke up to a few texts. My mom said, "Sorry, something came up." That was it. No details. My dad sent a thumbs-up emoji to a photo I had posted earlier of the decorations. Mark didn't say anything at all. I didn't reply. I didn't have the energy. Over the next few days, bits and pieces trickled in. Apparently, Mark had a rough week, and my parents had gone over to his place to support him. That was the reason. My 30th birthday had been completely overshadowed by whatever crisis Mark was dealing with, and nobody thought to even tell me. It was like my party never mattered in the first place. I tried to brush it off. I told myself it was just one day, just a party. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like a summary of my entire life. Every time I had been overlooked. Every time I had been expected to understand. Every time I had been told, "You know how he is." I stopped reaching out. I didn't call. I didn't text. And honestly, nobody seemed to notice. A whole week passed in silence. Then, exactly 7 days after my birthday, there was a knock on my door. I opened it and there was my mom, standing there with red, puffy eyes, looking like she hadn't slept. She immediately started crying and saying my name, talking about how overwhelmed she was, how stressed, how she didn't know what to do. I let her in, still completely numb. She sat on my couch, the same couch where I had sat alone on my birthday, and launched into this long story about Mark. Apparently, he had lost his job. Again. He was behind on rent. Again. He needed money. Again. And my parents had already drained their savings helping him. She looked at me and said, "We were hoping you could help this time." Something inside me just snapped, not in a yelling, dramatic way. It was quieter than that. I felt this strange calm wash over me, like a switch had flipped. I listened to her talk, nodding occasionally, and then she finally paused, waiting for my answer. I asked her one simple question. I said, "Why didn't you come to my birthday party?" She froze. She looked genuinely confused, like she hadn't expected that to matter. She said, "I told you, something came up." And that's when I said it. I told her I wasn't giving them any money. I told her I wasn't helping. I reminded her that they couldn't even spare an hour for me on my 30th birthday, but now they expected me to drop everything for Mark like always. She started crying harder, saying I was being selfish, that family helps family, that Mark was struggling. I asked her where my family was, when I was sitting alone, blowing out candles by myself. She didn't have an answer. She said I was holding a grudge. Maybe I was. But it felt less like a grudge and more like finally drawing a line. So that was the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause for a second and really think about it. If you were in my shoes, after a lifetime of being overlooked, after your own family skipped your milestone birthday without a word, would you have helped anyway? Or would you have said no too? After my mom left that day, our relationship changed completely. She didn't speak to me for weeks. My dad sent me a long message about how disappointed he was in me, how he raised me to be better than this. Mark finally reached out, not to apologize, but to tell me I was being dramatic and that birthdays weren't a big deal. That one stung the most. It wasn't about the party. It was never just about the party. It was about feeling invisible. Over the next few months, I had a lot of time to think. For the first time, I started putting myself first without apologizing for it. I stopped bailing my family out emotionally and financially. I focused on my own life, my friends, my work. And you know what? I started to feel lighter, less resentful, like I could finally breathe. Eventually, my mom reached out again, this time calmer. She apologized, not perfectly, but enough. She admitted they had taken me for granted. Things aren't magically fixed. And Mark is still Mark, but the dynamic has shifted. I don't chase their approval anymore. Looking back, that lonely birthday hurt more than I can put into words. But it also changed me. It forced me to see my worth without needing it validated by people who couldn't or wouldn't show up for me. Sometimes the most painful moments are the ones that wake you up. So that's my story. If you are on my side, hit that like button. If you want to hear more stories like this, make sure you subscribe. And seriously, tell me in the comments what you would have done if you were me. Was I wrong, or was it about time I stood up for myself? I'll see you all in the next story.